Hello, amazing humans around the world. Thank you for joining me here at Dangerous Ideas. I've got an incredible show for you today. We will be talking a little later about Israel's secret weapon that may actually kill more Gazans than bombs. We will be talking about how now even the New York Times is saying that Israel knew about the October 7th attack for at least a year prior. All of that's coming up, as well as Eleanor Goldfield. But first, I want to get to, I believe this is the third presidential candidate I have had on this show in recent months. It's a bit of an embarrassment of riches that there are so many excellent people running and none of them on the Republican and Democrat tickets. So without further ado, and don't forget to click thumbs up and share and all that good stuff so we can get this out to as many people as possible. But please welcome Dr. Jill Stein.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. Can't complain.
All things considered. Yeah, absolutely.
We're not being bombed and ethnically cleansed and starved and, denied water and energy. So hard to complain. What can I say?
Yeah, let's start with that, and then we'll get to more of the questions about your campaign. But yeah, just I see that Israel is now bombing again. It has started back up. Your thoughts on all of this?
It makes me want to join a hunger strike or, a blockade or something, of Congress. I mean, it's just enough to drive one to absolute distraction. Witnessing, televised genocide and ethnic cleansing. And the more we learn about this, the more the more confirming it is that this whole process is just so unacceptable, immoral, just driven from the outset. I mean, when you look at what's going on, it's not only the genocide, but it's that people are being herded into southern Gaza, from what I've read in one source, into basically an area the size of the LA airport, in order to basically put pressure on Egypt to open the border and just get them all out. I mean, there's no feasible explanation for what's going on here other than ethnic cleansing and genocide, because it's a complete scorched earth policy. Everything is being destroyed. There are no homes. They made a big deal out of Al-Shifa Hospital being the command and control center. And then there was no command and control center. It was another case of weapons of mass destruction. And then they went on to do the same thing to another hospital, in northern Gaza, as if every hospital and healthcare center and school and refugee settlement area is some command and control center. It's just unbelievable.
And in terms of the command and control center garbage, I kept saying, I don't care if they do find, I don't care if tomorrow we see the deck of the Starship Enterprise underneath one of those hospitals. You still can't obliterate a hospital. It's still a war crime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not hospitals, not healthcare centers, not schools, not refugee centers, not the press, not the homes of journalists. I mean, it's just a war crime upon war crime. And one has to, not only, lament what this means for the people of Gaza and Palestine, but this also really spells the end for the nation of Israel, because the water is being so completely poisoned against them now by what is being done by the Netanyahu government. And countries are cutting off, their formal relations right and left. And it's not just the countries in the Middle East, which really matter, because this is kind of a problem to have well-armed neighbors. Who are like really being mobilized against you. But, in Latin America, in South Africa, it's just one after another. The world is being absolutely horrified having to witness this. And, I think it just really inspires incredible determination that we have to stop it, and I had already mobilized to fill the gap when Cornel West left the Green Party. And here we had all these ballots lines, for about 20 states. And actually, it's about 80% of the work to getting on the ballot across the nation. It may only be 20 states, but it's like some of the most difficult and expensive states with some of the highest bars. So I could not conscience letting that go to waste. But then right after that decision was made, and then we had a couple of weeks to basically pull a campaign together, very rapid fire. Then at the same time, then the October 7th happened, which was horrible. But the problem didn't start on October 7th. October 7th itself was a response to decades worth of ethnic cleansing and violence and abuse that began really with the founding of the state of Israel. So, this has just drawn attention to this horrific problem from the get-go. And it's not enough to just have a peace, a ceasefire and a peace agreement. We've got to go back to the drawing boards, and all parties need to comply with international law and human rights. And that means no violence. It also means no apartheid, which is inherently a state of violence. So, at any rate, just all this broke out before we launched. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm so glad we're going to do this, because if we weren't in the race here, there would be no voice that's on the ballot across the country offering a real choice pro-worker climate emergency campaign. And it's got to be fought. So, as much as we're tearing our hair out, I want to encourage people to use a political fight back as well, because at the end of the day, that's one thing that we have. They can't take that away from us.
So you brought it up, and I think a lot of people, despite, it's been many weeks since this went down, where Cornel West was on the Green Party ballot. For a while there, you were his campaign manager. Then he left the Green Party and is running as an independent. And now you're running. And I think that despite it being many weeks, some people are still unclear as to what happened and why. And so if you kind of want to just clarify that a little more.
It's totally understandable that Cornel West wanted to run as an independent. It's very hard to build a relationship with a political party while you are running for office for the first time. It's almost impossible. I was recruited way back in the year 2000. I was recruited as an activist, as a healthcare and environmental advocate. I was recruited, and out of desperation, I agreed to run for office. This was running for governor in the year 2000. I did not have a relationship with the Green Party at the time. And I can't say we forged much of a relationship. It took me running several times to realize what's the point of running with a party. I mean, the party is immeasurably helpful, but it takes knowing the party and how it works in order to work as a team. It's very hard to develop that teamwork like right off the bat, and you don't know people and you don't know how it works. So I completely understand why Dr. West decided to run independent, but in my view, it was a completely unstrategic move and kind of reflected a newcomer's, position for just not understanding what it means to have ballot access. And he gave up about $4 million worth of ballot lines. So that's why he left. And then I jumped in because I did not want to see the hard work of the Green Party over decades, really, to build that ballot status. Ballot status is it's both like what happened in the last election, it's what happened since the election, and it's just that culture of knowing how to fight for political power. That's what ballot status is. It's fighting for political power. So I didn't want to see that go to waste. And I really, I knew that it was going to be such a steep uphill climb for Dr. West as an independent. It's a steep hill climb for all the independents, including RFK. It will be very hard for him too. And whether he gets on is anybody's, guess at this point. We don't know. No labels, this fake kind of AstroTurf party, which is, it's just a corporate front group. But they can raise a lot of money. They've raised supposedly $70 million. What for? Allegedly to get on the ballot. That's a lot of money. To get on the ballot, 70 million. And I can see why you have to do that if you don't have a grassroots network. But because the Greens have a grassroots network in just about every state, we know how to fight these battles in a way that we're very confident we're going to be on the ballot, probably in 50 states this time. We were on for 47 in 2016, and we're way stronger and more powered up now. So I think we're likely to get on in all 50 states. And so who else is going to be there contesting for power? I don't know. At this point, to my mind, it's a three-way race, and we'll see if it's going to be more than that. But at least we will have that voice. And that's why I could not, in good conscience, not jump into the race.
So this is your third campaign for president. I remember I performed or hosted or something, an event for you in New York City in 2012, the day before you were arrested by the DNC for daring to try and attend the debate. And then the last one, you announced your exploratory committee on my show once.
That's right.
And so, I always think you run passionate and important campaigns. What's different about this one than the first two?
I'd say we were ahead of the curve in the prior, and I think the curve has caught up to us. And there's a lot of people who are where we are right now. If you look at the numbers, it's a record 63% of voters who now say they, that the two parties of war and Wall Street have failed us, and we need a party that serves the people. If you look at identification, there are twice as many who identify as independent now as either Democrat or Republican, and people are just sick up to here with these zombie candidates, that is Trump and Biden, who are basically being forced down our throats by two zombie political parties who are so incredibly out of touch. They don't have a clue. So what's really different is that people are really hungering for, what we've been offering for quite a while, and Greens have put into the national agenda really everything that people are clamoring for a healthcare as a human right that was introduced by Ralph Nader in the year 2000 with the single payer, it was called at the time. Abolishing student debt, that was our campaign in 2012, and we were ridiculed for that by John Oliver in, I think it was 2016 when he tried to crush that. Free public higher education, we introduced that in 2012. The need for reparations, that was also in 2012. The Green New Deal, needless to say, 2012 in our campaign, earlier than that, through the Green Party. So, it's like what we need.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine, yeah, you're not kidding. And we're the only voice now, that will be on the ballot that is calling for a free Palestine and an end to apartheid and ethnic cleansing. And, and going back to the drawing boards to ensure that we have peace and security and decency and human rights for all parties.
Yeah. Another great difficulty for anybody running outside of the two massive corporate parties is just getting any kind of media coverage. It's the amount of billions, either quote unquote earned media or not earned, that is spent on those two parties is just often seems insurmountable. So what's your game plan for that?
Well, it's like, I don't want to jinx this, but we've gotten very decent coverage so far in mainstream media, and it continues to move forward. But at the end of the day, it's really reaching out to people who are not watching mainstream media, who are our base, really the people who are in rebellion, working people who are being thrown under the bus, 60% who are, living paycheck to paycheck, half of renters who are, just incredibly squeezed and at risk, just keeping a roof over their head, 100 million carrying medical debt, 44 million student debt, that's our base, and they're not watching MSNBC. it's a challenge to reach out. I have to say, this time we have, for the first time, a real ground game and real field organization, and that's really exciting. We're beginning our first road trip starting the second week in December. We'll be in South Dakota, visiting, and supporting some of the indigenous frontline communities. We'll be in Michigan. I hope we can get to Flint and maybe New Palestine, as well as some of the very strong Palestinian communities there. We'll be at the Amazon Center in Staten Island, New York, and are actually working with Christian Smalls, who is supporting our campaign. So a lot of, there's a lot of rebellion going on right now, which is not being intimidated. What's that?
A lot of worker strikes, more than we've seen in maybe even a generation.
Exactly. And workers who are not taking marching orders from, traditional organized labor or the Democratic Party, and who are really ready to stand up and fight back in a way that actually means something. And then, on top of that, you have the whole lesser evil mythology, which has really bitten the dust right now, because it's, the Democrats and Republicans have changed places on a few issues, like leading the charge for war and nuclear weapons and
being excited about everything the CIA does. That used to be a Republican thing.
Yeah, that and censorship as well. So it's like, it's really too confusing when you try to figure out who's the lesser evil. I think they're both the greater evil, and people really want to go with the greater good right now. So it's like as exciting a setup as possible, and the state of emergency that we are facing, crushing inequality, endless war verging on nuclear, climate collapse, you name it, the absolute dissolution of our democracy. It's really bad, and there's no one party to blame it on, and that kind of language is just like a joke. And so people aren't being bullied and intimidated like they have been in the past. For many people, genocide is a red line. And as much as they have been kind of trapped by the Democratic Party, they just can't go there around genocide. So I think all bets are off about the way that this is going to go. And I think there's nothing to lose here. We have only to gain, because the two parties are kind of both greater evils right now, and have been arguably for quite a while. Like, to look at the climate, for example, there are a lot of people who are arguing, oh, you have to, stop Trump because of the climate. Well, I would refer you to a study put out recently by the Sierra Club that looks at these 20 LNG export facilities that are now in the works. They are either approved or pending approval. Many of them since Joe Biden and his friends blew up the pipeline. So LNG, okay, let me just make one point.
Go ahead.
The LNG facilities that are now on the docket are the equivalent of over 400 new coal plants. So people who think, and by the way, they are off the books, because if you're exporting it, it doesn't count on our ledger. So we have this illusion that we've been improving on the climate, but actually we haven't reduced our emissions one iota since 2005. And the Inflation Reduction Act is actually a fossil fuels first act that requires 60 million acres every year offshore be auctioned off, and 2 million acres onshore be auctioned off every year before any major renewable energy projects can be.
There's an easy argument to make that the Democrats are actually worse, because they talk this game of caring about climate change or caring about climate crisis. And then, Obama later proudly said that he laid more pipeline than any president, enough to encircle the world 3 times. He said he made the United States a mass oil exporter. So,
yes.
Yeah. So it's an easy argument to say that it's actually worse to pretend you're doing something and doing absolutely nothing. Thank you, Jill Stein, so much for coming on here. I mean, I believe that these ideas are important, and that you and Cornell and Claudia and those of you speaking them should be given the platforms to get these ideas into people's minds, because they're so important. And I'm glad you're doing it. What is the website for people to follow?
JillStein2024.com. And join the team. Time is short.
Thank you so much. I'm sure I'll talk to you again before this election comes around.
Peace out.
All right, Dr. Jill Stein. And now I have another special guest joining the show. This is Eleanor Goldfield. Hello. Welcome. The cat was taking a position until just now. But oh wait, hold on. I gotta scoot over.
You wanted to avoid the awkward, like.
No, I knew it'd be partially awkward. I just didn't know.
How awkward? Oh, I can make anything super awkward. Just watch me. Hello, everyone.
Hello. All right.
Like,
okay. From one wonderful guest to another. Well, you're a co-host. That's different, actually. But we have a lot of stories to get to. Actually, because we just had Jill Stein on, I have to remind everyone that I can't endorse anyone because I am the campaign manager for a rock that I found in my front yard. And
your backyard?
One of the yards, and they're all about 12 square feet. So, and yardrock2024.com is the website. And if you buy any merch there, 50% of the proceeds go to eliminate medical debt of those struggling across America. And we've already eliminated $70,000 of medical debt.
If I may be so bold. Okay.
No.
To also do a pitch for raising funds. I'm selling shirts. It's just a really simple design. Jewish as in Free Palestine. And all of that, all of the income that's made from those shirts is going directly to the Palestinian Medical Relief Society. Just donated $250 from the first batch of shirts that folks bought. So if you're Jewish, or if you know a cool radical Jew who's not Zionist because they're human beings, then check out that. You can see it on my website, artkillingapathy.com. I've tweeted about it, Instagram, etc.
So they can find it on your Instagram and your Twitter. And
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, two cool things to support there. All right. Well, I don't want to run out of time because we have like 100 great topics. That are not great in terms of what they're talking about, but great as important topics to get to, or issues to get to. So let's start with the. I titled this episode that I titled it "Israel's Secret Weapon." Because
besides the U.S. piggy bank,
I don't know if that one's that secret.
Wow.
But this very well could kill more Gazans than bombs in this ethnic cleansing effort, and it's I believe it's very much by design. It's not an accident. If you want to take it from there.
So, as Middle East Eye reported, according to the World Health Organization, more people could die from disease than from bombs in Gaza. And, this is something that I've been hearing reports about for quite some time, not just things like, oh, the air quality is terrible, because if anyone has ever even seen one bomb go off, like or even just like a building demolished, the smoke. I mean, think about like 9/11, when those buildings fell, the amount of people that had health issues after that was astronomical. And they're leveling entire cities, they're leveling basically the entire areas in Gaza. And so on top of that, they of course don't have access to clean water, food, things like that. So it's not just about surviving the bombing, it's about surviving the aftermath, which of course is part of this, part of their goal, right? They don't need to actually kill everyone via bombing, and they know that they can just continue to restrict the access to any kind of aid, which is of course why they've also made it impossible for aid trucks to get through.
Right. And so this actually speaks to what a lot of people have not understood, which is, why is Israel bombing hospitals? They claim weekly that there's a control center underneath or whatever, but no one really believes that. And even if there was, it still would be a war crime. And this is the answer. Is they're trying to make disease their true weapon, and asthma and so many other things is the true weapon that they could see achieving the ethnic cleansing on a level that they're unable to achieve with just straight bombing. And so they are trying to get the health system to collapse. I mean, it essentially has, at least in northern Gaza. And this is the reason, because they also prefer disease as a weapon, because then they can go, well, that wasn't our doing, but it very much is their doing.
Of course. Well, it's like the smallpox blankets in
Yeah.
the US. It's
Yeah.
like that is absolutely your doing. It did not exist before you assholes got here. And of course, particularly with children, the issue of disease, particularly as they say, diarrheal diseases caused by lack of access to clean water, is incredibly dangerous. Which, of course, and since most of Gaza was children to begin with anyway, this is even more deadly and horrific. And I feel like terrorism isn't even like the appropriate word. Terrorism seems too soft. This is a level of horror that I feel like most of Hitler's men would be impressed by, which is, again, something that makes it even that much more twisted.
So next up, I want to get to the fact that, so I've been covering this for
we kind of
several weeks. Well, no, but what's new, and this is a big update, is that now you have mainstream media outlets like the New York Times also saying, which I said a couple of weeks ago, there were reports, these were not mainstream media, but reports saying that IDF soldiers were raising the alarm that Hamas was planning something. There was many of the guns, etc., that Hamas had came from IDF bases, meaning someone was helping them get them.
Well, I mean, this is the most surveilled place on the planet.
Yeah.
You can't take a piss without Israel knowing about it, and yet somehow they managed. It's like that just never felt right to me. Particularly when you look at the WikiLeaks cables from 2007 and 2008 that showed that Israel wanted Hamas to grow because it would allow them to treat Palestine as a, quote unquote, worthy adversary, as opposed to just pummeling somebody while they're down. Of course, Hamas is still not a quote unquote worthy adversary because they have nowhere near the amount of firepower or even human power that the Israeli army does. But yeah, it just never felt right to me that, like, oh, Israel can tell you if which Palestinian took a shit today, but it didn't know that this was coming. They
know exactly where every single Hamas fighter is within tunnels underground, yet they had no idea that the largest attack they've seen in decades was going to happen. And so now you have even the New York Times. This is Yahoo reposting the New York Times.
Because New York Times is a paywall, which is like ridiculous that you'd have to pay to read that shit.
I know.
Sorry.
But so now you have even the New York Times saying Israel knew Hamas's attack plan for more than a year. Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan for October 7th, more than a year before it happened. Documents, emails, and interviews show. But now I think this is where you get into the propaganda. Israeli military and intelligence dismissed it as aspirational and never thought it was going to be much. But do you really think when Israel's going in and like pre-October 7th, they would go into Gaza, they'd go into West Bank and they'd murder people, they'd imprison, they'd already had 5,000 people imprisoned on nothing charges that they suspected of something or some bullshit like that. So do you really think they just allow Hamas to plan this type of thing, thinking it wasn't going to be anything? Or do you think they allowed Hamas to plan this type of thing because they knew this would serve as an in for them to achieve their ethnic cleansing aims? And to me, the second possibility is just far more likely. The 40-page document, which Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, had point by point how it was going to go down, and all of it ultimately held true. The translated document, which was reviewed by the New York Times, did not set a date for the attack, but described a methodical assault, et cetera, et cetera. The plan also included details about the location and size of Israeli military forces, communication hubs, sensitive information, raising questions about how Hamas gathered its intelligence and whether there were leaks from inside the Israeli security establishment. I think we're seeing more and more evidence coming out that Israel allowed this to happen because it serves their ends. And that's what your mainstream media can't tell you. And until, this New York Times article, they weren't even saying that Israel knew in advance about any of this.
Well, right. And it's like, because if you look at corporate media, which I don't really recommend, but the question, anytime somebody's asked as like why they support rights for Palestinians or whatever, it's always like, well, what about October 7th? What about October 7th? So that's very convenient for Israel to have that, to use that to basically, it's kind of like the US used 9/11. Well, we're invading Iraq. What that had nothing, but 9/11. You're like, why are you yelled? That has nothing to do with and it would just like, it would be used as a way to shut down any kind of conversation about the realities and the total injustice of the situation. And that's exactly what October 7th, I mean, just the fact that we talk about it, right? It's just October 7th. And I don't have to say the attacks that happened in Israel. You just know, right? It's become like that. It's already become that part of our zeitgeist, October 7th. So that is so convenient for Israel, because now instead of just going and carpet bombing Gaza, they can point to something. And so many people who want to just do like the both sidesing, or they're scared of being called anti-Semitic, even though Palestinians are Semitic, and this is, just Google it. It's not that damn hard. But like they're like, oh, but October 7th. So that is so useful, and it's so sick and twisted, because this is a playbook that we've seen many times before as well.
Yeah. And I mean, when you put all this together, like the information I covered yesterday, more information coming out that the IDF was just indiscriminately bombing people. You have admissions from tank gunners saying they were told to fire on civilian structures, even though they knew there were civilians in there. And it's like, not only did Israel seemingly allow this to happen, have all the warnings this was happening and allow it to happen, but then when it actually happens, they do half the killing themselves.
Yeah. Well, and if you just look at like the evidence from the kibbutzes, or from the, people basically burned to a crisp in their cars, Hamas does not have that military technology. Right. Like they do not have Apache helicopters. Like if you just know, and I don't even know that much about military weaponry. Like I was the person, out organizing against the war. I know dick about military weaponry. And yet I'm looking at all of these military experts pointing out, okay, this can't do that, and that can't do this, and that's obvious. And I could look at this in 1 second, tell you that that's physically impossible to do with the weaponry that Hamas has. It's like, you don't have, I mean, this is just simple shit.
But to help get to the bottom of this, Israel has announced they will be shredding and burying all of the cars involved in the attack that still have blood and bullet holes, etc. They're all going to be shredded and buried, because that'll help us sort out.
I thought they said that because they were doing that because it's environmentally friendly.
They did. It's environmentally friendly.
No.
You think that's the real reason?
Oh, I feel like Israel's very greenly. I don't
very green. Very green. Okay, so let's keep it going. And there's new information on perhaps a kind of secondary reason for that Israel might want this ethnic cleansing to take place.
Well, and so I actually did an interview earlier today that talked about this, which is there's several outlets that are saying, this quote unquote, this genocide is about oil. Now, I don't have a problem with admitting that, particularly as Leah's covered a lot with the petrodollar, the United States and our allies such as Israel can't get enough oil, absolutely cannot live without it. However, to suggest that this is about oil, as in like in its entirety, lets Israel off the hook, because Israel is a violent white supremacist settler colonial state that wanted to get rid of people, of Palestinians since day one. Their mission statement: more land, fewer Palestinians. That was literally that's their goal. So to say that it's about oil lets them off the hook, because it's like, hey, it's not that we wanted to genocide you, we just wanted the oil, which that's bad enough. but it lets them off the hook because they are really that sick and twisted that they just want to genocide people also because they want to get rid of them. They want to wipe Palestinians off of the face of the earth. And so to say that it's all about oil, I think is a little too nice, as twisted as that sounds.
Well, and that's why I said secondary reason. I think.
No, I know you did, but like other
reports.
Or...
Many people are claiming this is just about oil. They said the same thing about like the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Yes, oil can be a factor. I mean, we are stealing oil from Syria right now as we speak, but that is not the reason that we needed to collapse Syria. The reason the U.S. wanted to collapse Syria was largely because they went outside the petrodollar. They were a threat to Israel and to the U.S. power in the Middle East, and that's why we've now made it so Syria, 94% of all Syrians live below the poverty line. But why not steal some oil while you're there? You know, right. So I think that's very much true. Israel, yes, they will end up stealing this oil, and they actually are already signing deals with petroleum companies to get the oil out of the waters off of Gaza. But again, that is not the primary reason.
Right. And just to hammer that home a bit more. So according to a 2019 UN report, over 3 billion barrels of oil exist off the coast and beneath the occupied lands of Palestine. So that's 2019. I mean, when was the Great March of Return? 2018?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and of course, you've got the 75 years prior to this, but I just want to highlight that so many atrocities occurred before there was the official report about the millions of barrels of oil underneath the occupied lands of Palestine. So, just to make that point in case folks are wondering what oil has to do with it.
Shall we do this story next?
Just one more point there. Under Israeli occupation, Palestinians are not allowed. They're also not allowed to like collect rainwater, but I'm not kidding. They're not allowed to drill for oil and gas or build infrastructure for solar energy. Though under international law, these resources should belong to the occupied territory and not the occupying power.
Right.
So, yeah. Moving on.
Let's get to the Jewish National Fund.
So I wasn't actually familiar with this collection of douche canoes, but the Jewish National Fund is an organization with a 120 plus year history, which is basically like the advent of Zionism, of dispossession and theft of Palestinian lands, ethnic cleansing, and entrenching apartheid. It was founded in 1901. It was formed at the Fifth Zionist Congress held in Switzerland, and it served as the Zionist organization's financial arm to plan and facilitate the settler colonial project on Palestinian land. And the stated objective, quote, is to acquire any lands, forests, rights of possession, and other rights in the prescribed region for the purpose of settling Jews on such lands. Zionism, in a nutshell. And there's more backstory about the JNF here that right now I'm sharing from the Palestinian Youth Movement on Instagram. Y'all can check them out. And it just outlines like the horrors committed by the JNF, even, of course, prior to 1948 and then after. And currently, today, JNF is the largest private landowner in Israel, controlling 80% of the land, making one of the most powerful institutions of the Zionist entity. So there's a meeting this weekend in Colorado, in Denver, the 2023 Jewish National Fund's International Conference to fundraise for continued ethnic cleansing. I mean, what a time to be doing that.
Do they put that on the flyers? We need more funds for the ethnic cleansing.
I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised at this point.
I know.
I wouldn't be shocked if that was on the flyer.
Yeah.
So if you're anywhere in or around Denver, Colorado, this weekend, the conference is happening, and shut down JNF hashtag. That's the hashtag shut down JNF in Denver, Colorado. And you can learn more by going to bit.ly/shutdownjnf 2023. And the Colorado Palestine organization is also doing work to stop that and shut it down. So yeah, if you're in and around Denver, Colorado, or if you just like to share this to let people know what JNF is, I think it's always important to know about these really twisted, sick organizations that are operating.
We have several more stories for you, including we are going to give you yet another way that the Democrats are trying to make it impossible for anyone to run against Joe Biden. They're coming up with a whole new game plan of trying.
They said that your rock can't debate, right?
Oh, he can debate. He'll debate the hell out of Joe Biden.
I mean, literally, I think any rock could.
Anyway, we're gonna bring you that story as well as several others, but all of the rest of this is going to be at rumble.com/leecamp, as well as my locals page, rumble.com/leecamp. It's free to watch at Rumble, so if you want to keep watching the free version, just go to rumble.com/leecamp and grab it there. If you want to support this show and you'd like to see it keep going, because funding is just always an issue for this when you don't have giant corporate ads all over the page. I hope you will become a member at leecamp.net, which forwards you to my locals page. Or if you're on Rumble, it says join Lee. There's a button underneath the video.
Link just so it's easier for folks.
Okay, fine.
I'm all about making things easier.
Well, then you got to talk while I do it. Okay, we've reached an impasse apparently.
Well, I don't do the, like the farting on command type stuff. I don't know how to do that.
Is that what you call my talking, farting?
No, like when somebody says, tell me a joke. Like, what do you do? It's awkward.
I fart on command. That's
there you go.
That's my response.
But I can't
every time.
I can't.
Okay, I put the link in the chat. Join us at rumble.com/leecamp. And if you want to start with the next story while I switch the streams.
That sounds inappropriate.
Sounds naughty.
Okay, so I mean, remember back in like 2016 or was it 2017 when the DNC was taken to court, and they basically said that they reserve the right to pick their candidate in smoke-filled